The news of the day, Tommy DeVito named the quarterback for the New York Giants, starting quarterback that is, as Daniel Jones heads to the bench.
JJ did it too.
What's next for the New York Giants at quarterback, assuming more not this week, but after this season?
So obviously, look, I want to start with why it's Tommy DeVito and it's not Drew Lock. I'll tell you what the Giants are saying, and then you can determine whether you believe it or not, okay? They're saying that Tommy DeVito is going to provide a spark. And like the fact that Kyle and I just did this right here, we know that the team, that the fans love him, right? That they're going to glom onto him a little bit. In fact, I actually just saw his agent, Sean Stellato, in Buffalo, where I was yesterday with the NFL Today. So we were chatting a little yesterday, but there's going to be a spark. He does know the offense, right? He has been there since the start of 2023, and you could argue, knows it better than Drew Lock. Okay, and then I would last say to that, Tyrod Taylor, he was healthy last year, and they stuck with Tommy DeVito until they wound up benching him. So there is some precedence here for the Giants on that. The other thing is, okay, you signed Drew Lock to a $5 million contract. So what? Right? Like in the NFL, so what? And if you do need that spark, if you do want someone who has some familiarity with that offense and the guys are going to get a lift from him, then there you go. I know there's a lot of questions about whether they're going to tank or not. I would just simply say, is there really going to be a material difference in their win-loss record between Tommy DeVito and Drew Lock? Is anyone really going to argue that Drew Lock, actually, he'd win them 2 more games than DeVito? I don't know that they are. So that's where we are right now, and then moving forward, I don't know who's going to be their quarterback in 2025. They don't know who their quarterback's going to be in 2025. There's not a huge free agent group that we are anticipating. Russell Wilson, I think we all think, is going to remain with the Pittsburgh Steelers in some form of a contract extension. Justin Fields will be available, and there's going to be a lot of teams that are probably going to try to scoop him up. But there's not a lot in free agency. And then in the draft, Mike, I know that you follow it a lot closer than I do right now. But, yeah, we can talk about a Cam Ward. We could talk about a Shedeur Sanders, but all that stuff's really early as it stands right now. So, but we do know this, of course. Daniel Jones has played his last snap for the New York Giants. He will be playing elsewhere in 2025. And the Giants, and no one on this earth, really truly knows who the next quarterback of the New York Giants is going to be.
JJ, I have a question for you, fiscal question here. If Daniel Jones ends up playing for a team in, say, Texas or, say, Florida, and I'm just doing hypotheticals here, he's still owed $22 million each of the next 2 years, correct, from the New York Giants? So is he going to be paying taxes in his new home, or is he going to be paying taxes on the Giants' bill?
He does not have any more guaranteed money. And that is the point about benching him right now, is that none of those injury guarantees are triggered.
That's all encompassing. I know that there's a big number for injury, but that they would be clear of all Daniel Jones line items if he were to get out of this thing healthy.
So a couple of years ago, when they signed him to that 4-year, $160 million contract, it was really a 2-year, $80 million contract and then a we'll see.
Got it.
And so we're at the we'll see now. He's not injured, and so now they're going to rid the books of him. There's going to be some dead cap, and it depends on if he's traded, if he's cut, when he's cut, if he's a post-June 1 designation. Ultimately, what fans and everyone need to understand is he's not going to get another dollar from the Giants in terms of guaranteed money because he's not going to play to trigger that injury guarantee. And then the dead cap is going to be $22 million over 1 year or 2.
Now, as far as the Giants, decision makers, coaches, who's safe? Do you get any inkling of changes going to be made in the Giants building?
Yeah, great question. And John Mara did what a lot of people call the kiss of death in this industry, where about a month ago said, hey, I don't expect to make any changes at the end of the year with Brian Daboll or Joe Schoen, and I will not make any in-season changes. I take him at his word that there will not be any in-season changes. We heard from Joe Schoen last week where he said, I believe I'm safe. Sources that I talked to around the league also believe that. And for the entirety of this season, the feeling and the vibe has been that if a move in the brain trust of the Giants is made, that it would be Brian Daboll before it would be the general manager. So like everything, you have to see how the season plays out. Because it wasn't that long ago that if the three of us were doing this show in Week 11 going into Week 12 of Joe Judge's last year with the Giants, I would have said, yeah, he's probably safe. And then the last 2-3 weeks of the season happened, and he talked himself out of the job, literally in the press conference, right? And so I'm not willing to say that Brian Daboll is definitively safe or is definitively not safe. But right now, these last several games are important, but I would lean toward Daboll being back, understanding all of what I just said.
I'll say this. If they are in a position where they're either drafting number 1 or number 2 overall, because I think there are 2 quarterbacks that are going to be worthy of that top pick. After that, I think if you're drafting anyone else, you're probably forcing it. And last time the Giants forced it, that's how they ended up with Daniel Jones. So I don't think they should do anything of that nature, but there'll be 2 quarterbacks. If they're in a position to get one, I think I would clean house. Head coach, GM, because you have a very high chance of having a Bears-esque situation on your hands where you have a lame duck head coach and a lame duck GM possibly in your very first year of your new franchise quarterback, and then all of a sudden you're switching regimes for that guy. If that's potentially the case, just get a new guy in there right away and let him have a 2 or 3 year plan for that young quarterback. But if you're not, and you're going to Justin Fields' route, yeah, I'd bring Daboll back to see, because I do think he's been done enough to be considered a guy that could win football games. They just haven't had the talent, unfortunately, on that roster. Let's go to another team that's in a state of disarray. Probably no team more so in the NFL after they lost 52-6 to the Lions this weekend. Jacksonville Jaguars. What the heck's going on there? A head coach, GM, what are we going to see from them going forward here?
I would not anticipate Doug Peterson or Trent Baalke being with the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2025. If you had asked me shortly after that loss to the Lions, and you said, hey, by lunchtime on Monday, will Doug Peterson still be employed by the Jaguars? I would have said probably not. And so now here we are, and I just missed a call from a source, so we'll see what is going on. But he's still employed.
Call him back.
With the Jacksonville Jaguars. So,
yeah,
call him back.
Yeah, right here. That's not this show. And so, look, I think for all intents and purposes, we can go ahead and talk about the end of the Doug Peterson era, right? We see the 2-9 start. Let's also remember this time last year, they were 8-3. Right? And so he's 3-14 in his last 17 games. 17 games makes a season, 3-14. And it's not just that the last 17 games are the complete opposite of, more or less the first 17 games, right? He was brought in to kind of bridge that Urban Meyer era. You needed that veteran head coach who just wouldn't be Urban Meyer, who was a veteran head coach. They bring him in, and it seemed to work, right? It seemed to work when they beat the Chargers in that playoff game, when they come out last season and they're 8-3. But look at what this offense is. And then he kind of offered up his entire defensive staff, Doug Peterson did, at the end of last year. It's like, okay, well, that was the problem. Now you have a defense that just gave up. Because I was in Buffalo at the NFL Today, I didn't get to watch that game entirely. And so I went back and watched all of it. Mike, I didn't realize that they scored 7 straight touchdowns. Like, not 7 drives without a punt, right? And 5 touchdowns and 2 field goals. 7 straight touchdown drives. So it's the way that it's going right now. It is this sort of reset that very clearly is needed. And I do not advocate for anyone in the NFL losing their jobs, but I also operate in reality and what this job is. And I knew that I was going to come on here and either talk about Doug Peterson having lost his job or Doug Peterson in the process of losing his job. And right now we are a verb tense away from it being one or the other.
You don't lose 52-6 in the NFL without, 1, a massive talent difference, and then 2, a pretty massive coaching difference. And I think you saw both of that on display in Jacksonville. So, yeah, I think I'm right there with you that the sooner the better. Turn the page here. It's not a roster that's completely bereft of talent, but they just need to start drafting better than they have. They can't build this whole thing through free agency the way they've tried to in recent years. They need to just start getting some singles in the draft.